welcome to what is likely going to be my favourite video ever, where I am rereading the entire Hunger Games series for the first time in 10 years. If you were anything like me growing up, you were obsessed with the Hunger Games, and even if you wasn't, there was no escaping it. The dystopian series that transfixed the early 2010s and redefined a whole new genre a whole decade later, and the series is still loved by so many. And with the new book of Sunrise on the Reaping coming out, I thought it would be fun to do a reread for the first time in 10 years. Does it still live up to the original hype? Is it still as good as everybody was saying? Here are all of my spoiler-filled thoughts. Hi guys, I have now officially started my reread of the Hunger Games, and when I tell you I'm having the time of my life, there is nothing that quite matches up to that feeling of rereading one of your childhood or teenage favorite books, knowing damn well that it's going to live up to all of the hype and you're still going to absolutely adore it. And that is exactly this for me. I'm having so much fun reading it. Simultaneously, I think reading it as an adult, I'm going to have an entirely new perspective. I feel like in many ways, the day that this was published, it already stood the test of time. It kind of instantly marked itself as an instant classic, and I love that for it. Simultaneously, I absolutely adored how this sort of book with this sort of narrative and this sort of discussion was so accessible to teenagers, and to me as a teenager I think it was brilliant and I just love it so much. Just a forewarning, you will see me nerd out over this book, you will see me nerd out over this entire series. It holds such a special place in my heart. The series really was that series that got me back into reading as a teenager, so for that it really holds a special place in my heart. But simultaneously, one of the first vlogs that I ever filmed was me reading The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So this entire world, for so many different reasons, every single facet of this universe I adore wholeheartedly, and I am so excited for the next book, which is naturally of course why I decided to do this reread. I'm 17% of the way through and it is so fascinating. I would 100% recommend, if you've loved watching the movies growing up, if you still love the movies and you've never read this book, or you have, please reread it. Please read it if you haven't already. Already 17% of the way through, I'm reminded of how much detail is in this book that isn't in the movies. I think it makes such great discussion and builds such incredible character analysis, especially when it comes to Katniss and Peter. Like the first 17%, my jaw's on the floor. How does Suzanne Collins make my jaw on the floor, make me surprised about what is happening when I know the story like the back of my hand? Like, that requires talent. With that being said, everything that has happened so far, obviously we have had the Reaping, we have had the history about the Reaping, we've had Katniss volunteer for prim, we've had Peter's name get out of the pool, and we've also had our introduction to Haymitch. I adore Haymitch's character so much. I kind of adored him from the first time I ever read this book and the first time I watched the movies, even without knowing what happened next. I think his character is one of the most fascinating characters in the entire universe, and for that I'm so incredibly excited for the Sunrise on the Reaping. Oh my god, the little snippet that we got for the Sunrise on the Reaping where we find out that Haymitch's birthday is on Reaping Day. My Shayla? It actually makes so much sense, and the fact that Suzanne Collins has been sitting on this nugget of information just that it's his birthday on Reaping Day, and she never let any of us know, and even in the book, like, we never found. I love this man so much. The last chapter that I read, we were following Katniss and Peter as they finally get into the capital, and they are now very much indulging in all of the food and all of the luxuries of the capital. The class divide between the capital and all of the districts is so apparent and is such a fascinating discussion and such a real and raw discussion that I think this universe and Suzanne Collins does brilliantly. It's such a double-edged sword because we are fully seeing these characters indulge in all of the privilege that the capital has that they have never had growing up in all of the districts, but especially District 12. I adore Katniss's inner monologue on all of that. I love her perception. I love how headstrong and witty and hilarious she is, but she's so real and she's so raw. Growing up, she was definitely my favourite female main character, and I feel like that definitely still stands true as an adult now, and I feel like I'm just really intrigued to see how it's going to carry on going and how I'm going to carry on feeling about it. No part of me thinks I'm going to dislike this series at all as an adult. In fact, I feel like I'm probably going to like it even more now that I can really analyse it, now that I can really recognise all of the discussions and the conversations that Suzanne Collins embedded into it. Even though I think it was really apparent as a child and a teenager, it's even more apparent unfortunately now. I'm just adoring it so far already. I'm so excited to carry on reading and to read the rest of this series in this video, and I've already said, but if you're not already aware, this is going to be spoiler filled. I decided to do this spoiler filled because one, I feel like everyone at this point has either watched the movies or read the books, and if you haven't, babe, please go do that and then come back to this video. I'm absolutely so prepared to binge read so much of this today, so I will update you when I have more updates. Guys, look at what arrived this morning? The fact that I cannot read it right now. I'm avoiding spoilers like the plague. Obviously, you're probably gonna know what this is because why are we all here watching this video right now? This arrived this morning. Sunrise on the Reaping got published yesterday, and like I just said, I'm quite sad that I can't read it just right now, and I'm avoiding spoilers genuinely like the plague. I'm fearing for my life every time I open TikTok. I thought I would unbox it on camera because I don't want it sitting in a box, you know? I want to look at it, I want to appreciate it even if I can't read it yet. That was satisfying. Oh my god. Okay, wait. No, because what do you mean I've been waiting literally 10 years of my life for a Haymitch novel and now it's just in my hands? Isn't it crazy how like publishing and literature just works like that sometimes? I also forgot that I actually pre-ordered the exclusive edition. I think the only exclusive thing about it, I'm scared to flick through it. This is what the naked hardback looks like. It is so gorgeous. I actually just can't. On the back it says, when you've been set up to lose everything you love, what is there left to fight for? I'm actually scared. I won't be reading this in this video because this video is solely for the original trilogy, but I will be filming my entire experience reading this, of course. I don't think I'll do spoilers. I'll do spoiler free, obviously, because it's just been published. You will be seeing my experience reading this. I feel like that just makes it so incredibly full circle on my channel, as I think I said in an earlier clip. One of my first reading vlogs that I ever uploaded on here, or maybe it actually was my first reading vlog. It was very early on into my channel, was my reading vlog for Songbirds, and I just feel like that's so incredibly full circle. I'm just so excited to finally get to this. I am anticipating to rate it 5 stars. I'm anticipating to sob like a bitch, I'm not gonna lie, but I just literally cannot wait. What is the first line? Let's at least tease ourselves. Part 1, the birthday. Happy birthday, Haymitch. Is the first line. I'm literally, my heart, I feel, why do I already want to cry? I haven't even started this yet. But anyway, Sunrise on the Reaping is finally in my hands. I am so happy. But Hunger Games, the first book, update. I'm now still not that far through. I'm on chapter 9 and I am just loving rereading this so much. I feel like I'm going to become a broken record in saying that. This isn't even my favourite book in the series. It's definitely my second favourite. My favourite alongside everyone else on this earth, even in terms of the movies, is of course Catching Fire. I am so excited to read Catching Fire. I feel like when I first read Catching Fire as like a young teenager, just the feelings that it gave me, I can so vividly picture them. I'm fully expecting to feel that all over again in rereading it. But my Hunger Games updates, like I said, I'm on chapter 9, which is page 132, and I am also listening to the audiobook alongside this. Quite a bit has happened since I last updated you. We literally just got to the scene where Katniss finds out that Peter now wants to be trained alone. Kind of forgot how much is obviously in here in comparison to the movie, and one of the biggest ones being Avox's. We had the scene where they were all sat around the dinner table and Katniss recognises this girl and kind of says out loud that she recognises her, and Effie and Haymitch are like, God, I hope not, because she's an Avox, and Katniss is obviously like, what is an Avox? And we find out that they are people who have committed crimes and therefore get their tongues cut off and removed and can no longer speak. And it is just such, I don't know, I was always so confused as to why they would cut out that sort of context and backstory in the movies, but essentially the girl was somebody that Katniss recognised because she kind of saw her and I think her brother or her partner, I can't remember exactly, but she was with another guy and they were running around the outskirts of District 12, and Katniss and Gale saw them when they were just going out on a hunt, and they kind of saw like the hovercraft from the capital come down and take them. Katniss mentions that they didn't look like they were from a district, so they suspected that they were running from the capital. But when saying that, I think it was either Haymitch or Katniss questioned where they were going, and there was a quote that said District 12 is the end of the line, where could they possibly be running to? And obviously that is foreshadowing of District 13, and I love foreshadowing in novels so much, especially in a series like this, and it even makes it more special when you're rereading it and you notice these little changes that obviously on a first read you wouldn't even kind of pick up on, and I just really adored that. We also had the scene where every contestant had to show like the game makers what they could do and what their talents were, and obviously Katniss is there with her little bow, and I swear to God, this scene actually changed my life as a teenager. It actually gagged me when she does the bow and arrow into the apple in the pig's mouth. Actually changed the trajectory of my life, and then she ends up getting the highest score out of all of them, and then now we are on to where Peter wants to be trained alone. I am so prepared to binge read this for the rest of the day. Honestly, if you don't hear an update until I'm saying like I'm on chapter, I don't even know how many chapters there are in this, till I'm on maybe like chapter 23, please don't be surprised. I am just loving my reread of this so much, and obviously I want to give as many updates as I can, especially because doing a spoiler filled vlog is always so fun. But yeah, this is an incredibly long clip. This is likely going to be an incredibly long video. I'm now going to go and read some more of this and probably cry over the fact that I cannot read this and it's just going to sit on my shelf.
Well, there is this one girl. I've had a crush on her ever since I can remember, but I'm pretty sure she didn't know I was alive until the reaping. I don't think it's going to work out. Winning won't help in my case, says Peter. Why ever not, says Caesar, because She came here with
So
me.
here's what you do. You win, you go home. She can't turn you down then, eh? I don't think it's gonna work out winning. Won't help my case. Why ever not? Because she came here with me. What I would give to be reading this for the first time again, or watching it for the first time again, and not knowing that that is coming. Like, I think I became a Peter girl there and there, like 13-year-old me. Reading that for the first time, oh my god. On reflection, literally gave me the same serotonin that it did reading a Harry Styles Wattpad fanfiction at 13. Like, that scene actually changed my life. I'm currently on page 262, so I thought I was due giving you guys an update on where I am, what is going on, how I'm feeling. Rereading this because my heart is about to be torn out of my chest. There are certain parts in every single book in this series that I so vividly remember, but in the first book there are so many very, very specific ones that I still never get out of my brain, and when I think about the Hunger Games, they are some of the first things that I think about, and just the actual raw reaction I had as a teenager reading it for the first time. I am so sorry to what I'm sure is a really abrupt ending to whatever I was just talking about. The rest of that clip corrupted. I have tried my absolute hardest in order to try and get the rest of the clip not corrupted. I can't do that without spending £75, and respectfully on one clip is crazy. Tried my hardest in order to try and get the rest of that clip back because I was reading Rue's death. I reacted to it, babe. I sobbed like a bitch, but nowhere wants me to get it without spending £75, which is absolutely crazy for one clip. So I just thought I would come on and kind of talk about what I was talking about again in that clip. I'm so sorry that it corrupted. I'm very annoyed at the fact that it did, but alas, these things happen. Basically was talking about how I was about to read Rue's death and how out of all of the deaths in this entire series, Rue's is one of the most hard-hitting for me. And I always felt with Katniss specifically, that was kind of the turning point where she realised you can direct your anger to the capital, and then obviously she dresses Rue in these gorgeous flowers and she covers all of her wounds with the flowers. And it is such a beautiful and really heartbreaking scene. Like I said, I did react to it on this camera, but I was sobbing, and obviously we don't have that reaction, so just trust my word that I was crying non-stop. As much as obviously it was so heartbreaking to read, it was just such a beautiful scene, and all of the quotes, the way that Rue wanted Katniss to sing her to sleep, how she says to Katniss, you need to win, and obviously all of the comparisons between Rue and Prim. She really sees Rue in Prim. No, she sees Prim in Rue, and it just makes it such a heartbreaking scene. And yeah, it was just one of the deaths that in this entire series really gets to me the most. Rue quite literally saved Katniss from the Tracker Jackers. Obviously we have that scene where they are working together with all of the careers, and also Peter underneath her tree. Katniss is there soaring the hive of the Tracker Jackers. Obviously they bite her and she gets like hallucinations, and then Rue spends the next couple of days just dressing all of her wounds and kind of saving her life. There's this gorgeous scene where they are really cold at night and they are snuggling together trying to get warm and just to find comfort and to sleep, and Katniss is so eldest daughter core. I am an eldest daughter, I have two younger sisters, and I feel like this reread is definitely going to make me realise how eldest daughter core Katniss actually is. Like, to my soul, I feel like I'm probably going to really relate to that, and it kind of is going to break my heart. But yeah, that is everything that I essentially said in that clip alongside just reading it and reacting to a few more scenes. But let's get back to the rest of the book. I don't know if you can actually hear me all the way from over here. Also, please ignore what I look like. I'm trying to get comfortable filming with no makeup on whilst I'm on Accutane still. Also, please excuse the fact that I'm going to talk really quietly. It's literally 10 p.m. I don't know why I'm deciding to film this now. Actually, I do, because I've now finished The Hunger Games. I absolutely adored reading this so much, and the ending, I forgot like just the shock factor of it, even when you know what is coming. I feel like I'm going to say it throughout all of the books and this entire reading vlog, but I so wish I could do anything. I would do anything, honestly, to reread all of these books for the first time again, and also to watch the movies for the first time again. I remember so vividly finishing this book for the first time, and the moment where they have the nightlock berries in their hands and they're both about to eat them, and obviously Katniss is kind of hoping that the Capitol are just going to call it off and that they can both win, because obviously a suicide would be insane. But obviously when you haven't read it before, you do not see that coming, and it's just so good. The entire ending, I love it so much. I will say in the end, I think I'm going to rate it 4.5 stars. When I first read it, it was absolutely a 5-star, and I think think in nostalgia wise, undoubtedly a 5-star. Reading it as an adult, it's definitely not a perfect book. I think when we are in the cave, when Katniss and Peeta are together again, although there are such humorous moments and really imperative moments, it does get slightly repetitive in terms of the hunting and just them sitting in a cave chatting, but I know that that is a really imperative part of the story again, so I don't mind it, but it does get slightly repetitive. So in my heart, I want to rate it 5 stars because I just love it so much and it's so nostalgic, but I think it is going to be a 4.5. One of the conversations they did have when they were in the cave, however, was about Haymitch's games, and the whole time I was sat there reading it and I was like, the fact that we have a book now purely detailing Haymitch's games and what he went through in the arena, or like, I just actually can't, I'm not prepared to read it. I just love this reread so much. I feel like I have so much more I want to say about it, but as I said, it is really late and I just want to start Catching Fire, which is of course, like a lot of people's, my absolute favourite book, my absolute favourite movie. This one, I'm expecting it to be 5 stars. I will be shocked if it's not. I honestly just want to curl up in bed with this right now and just read as much as I can before I get tired and I fall asleep. I just love this book so much. And Finnick, yeah. I'm gonna start my reread of Catching Fire and I will update you with how far I have read tomorrow morning. Guys, last night I made a start on my reread of Catching Fire and I got up to page 51. I already am having the time of my life with this one. I already said this was my favourite growing up. This is my favourite movie out of all of the Hunger Games ones, but this entire book and story is just the epitome of nostalgia for me in terms of the fact that this book was one of my favourite books growing up. Even in the first 50 pages, so much has happened and it gives so much away and kind of foreshadows all of the quarter quell and what is about to happen. Every single quarter quell in the Hunger Games, something new happens. Haymitch's games was also a quarter quell, which I'm literally terrified to read because I kind of forgot about that. Pretty sure that in it said that for his games specifically there were double the tributes, so instead of 24 tributes there were 48. They've obviously been touching upon the fact that it's the 75th Hunger Games and therefore a quarter quell, so they're really curious to see obviously what the twist is going to be, especially as Katniss and Peeta are going to be mentors for the District 12 tributes. Every single year the victors of the games have to do kind of laps around all of the districts and they have to do speeches and they have dinners and it's all very, I don't like it at all. Obviously Katniss and Peeta are going around to all of the districts and it is such an eerie atmosphere, especially when they go to District 11 with of course Rue and Fresh. It is such a hard scene to read, but Peeta essentially announces that for their entire life, the victors' families, they are going to give, or Katniss and Peeta are going to give a portions of their winnings every single month. In return from that, all of the residents of District 11, essentially it feels like an early uprising. There is this old man. This moment in the movie is the first sign and the first time that Katniss and Peeta see these potential uprisings and this potential revolution very early on in Catching Fire. Snow essentially has this meeting with Katniss where he tells her that there are uprisings beginning in the districts, and I find that also so interesting because obviously the districts don't know a lot about one another, but then every single year when they get the little snippets of the person behind the district in the Hunger Games, they don't really know a lot. Like even when Katniss and Peeta are on the train going into District 11, they're talking about how in school they learned that District 11 is a really large district, but that was kind of it, and then everything else was a little bit of a surprise because the districts don't know anything about each other. Obviously from Snow's perspective, that is absolutely a way of suppressing a uprising because they literally cannot work together, and like District 11 especially has such high barbed wired fences, and I just found it so interesting because when the old man from District 11 obviously does like the 3 fingers and they play the Mockingjay tune, everyone else in the crowd then does it and he gets dragged away and gets shot, and it's so evident that this is the first time that Katniss is believing Snow when he talks about these uprisings. From then on she kind of comes to the conclusion that like she's never ever gonna be able to not be in love with Peeta and not be married to Peeta, and she's gonna have to spend her entire life living by this lie even though herself she doesn't even really know how she feels about him. It's just such a confusing period in the book in terms of the character analysis. It is so fascinating and I was just so impressed that literally the first 50 pages of this book perfectly sets up what is going to happen for the rest of the series. So just kind of got to the scenes where Katniss keeps getting nightmares and Peeta keeps coming into her room, and it breaks my heart so much. Obviously if you've read the books or you've watched the movies, that carries on being a massive theme, but they also touch upon the fact that Haymitch cannot sleep in the dark, rumoured due to his games, and now rereading this knowing that there's a book waiting for me that I haven't read yet from Haymitch's perspective and his games, Like, I really am not ready, and I cannot stress it enough. But yeah, that is where I'm up to with Catching Fire. Literally just got to the moment where Katniss proposes a very public proposal, and Peter gets upset because Haymitch is like, that's not how you would have wanted to do it. And now knowing how the entire series ends, and I literally have the actual final shot of the movie just printed into my brain. Reflecting on this part of Katniss and Peter's relationship is so bittersweet, like seeing the inner workings of it all, but I'm really enjoying this reread so far, so I'm gonna carry on with it today. I'm hoping I can get a good chunk read. Honestly, I feel like this book, especially in comparison to the first one, I'm just gonna binge read it because, like I said, it is my favourite. And babe, I'm not gonna lie, I know that Finnick is on his way. Obviously, I'm gonna want to get to that really soon. I'm gonna try and read a lot, and I will update you once I have some more thoughts. A little Catching Fire update. I am now on page 129. So much has happened. This book literally is curing every single piece of book hangover, book slump I felt sensing coming. It's curing all of it. At the time of filming this yesterday, my best friend and I actually went on a hike. It was literally in the most gorgeous forest. It was so beautiful, and on the way home I was listening to more of Catching Fire. Going on a walk around a forest and then listening to this, like, it fit the vibes perfectly, and I just am having the time of my life rereading this, albeit it is so incredibly painful to reread and just to experience. I am picking up on so much more than I did every other time that I've reread it as an adult, and that's making me so happy because I feel like I have so much more to say about it now. I recently read the scene where Katniss goes to the mayor's house, and I find it so interesting in comparison to the movie because we don't get a lot of what's her name? Madge? The mayor's daughter anyway. Isn't that entire subplot removed from the movies? And I feel like it makes so much sense contextually that I'm like, I kind of wish it was included more in depth in the film. But she essentially goes to the mayor's house and she sees this TV screen with clips from District 8 and the uprisings in District 8. It's obvious that she's not meant to be the one seeing this, and she kind of realizes, especially after her and Peter go to District 11 and that entire scene plays out where they are definitely noticing an uprising and everything that Snow said to Katniss in their meeting. Once she has seen District 8 and their uprising, she's kind of absolutely realizing that people are using her and using this as a vessel to have a revolution. Also really intrigued to see if anything to do with the mayor's family or Marge's family, I feel like I'm pronouncing her name wrong, is going to be involved in Sunrise on the Reaping. I do have a sneaky suspicion that book has to include some people who we've seen in the original trilogy. I just don't know exactly who yet, and I feel like that's going to be so nostalgic and so beautifully interweaved. I just love that so much in series when people just start popping in and out. But anyway, there is this conversation where they're talking about jabberjays and their history throughout the entire district. Like, throughout the war, the capital would use jabberjays to kind of overhear conversations from the rebels, and then mockingjays kind of came out of nowhere, and they were talking about how mockingjays kind of just thrived and literally came out of nowhere. Nobody was expecting them. I found that conversation so interesting because it was so clear that it was a complete reflection on Katniss. Like, nobody was expecting this girl from District 12 to just volunteer for her sister at the Reaping and literally become this vessel for a revolution and be the change that everybody's wanted to see for decades. I think that that was just such a beautiful moment. I feel like it's also worth mentioning and also worth talking about Gale, even though that's not what I want to do. Obviously, Gale and Katniss have grown up together, like they are brothers, sisters, like vibes. They're, for me anyway, they're like brother-sisterly vibes, but I know that some people genuinely ship them. I know that there is an entire arc in this book anyway, where we are seeing them sort of explore those feelings in that side of their relationship, and there is a scene where they essentially kiss. They very much brush the kiss under the carpet. They don't talk about it at all ever since Katniss's return, but Snow essentially knows that they had a kiss, which doesn't work well because everyone's trying to sell that they are cousins. Babe, unless you're kissing your cousin, that's a little bit problematic. I have never been a Gale girl. I've never liked Gale. I've never liked Katniss and Gale together. As I said, they give me more sister-brother vibe. I also think that Gale's just a little bit of a bitch. I'm not gonna lie. He's like, I really just don't like him. However, I will say the scene that I'm currently reading is the scene where he is essentially caught by I forget what they are called. One of the capital's guard people who come to the districts essentially due to the uprisings, where they just are making sure that everyone kind of stays in line. Obviously, Katniss and Gale were always out hunting together and they were never caught, but it was always kind of a secret in District 12. Like, they would deal out all of the things that they caught in exchange for other goods. But this guard catches Gale whilst he's literally holding the turkey over his shoulder, and that's quite punishable, so he goes to the square and just essentially gets whipped and gets punished. It's definitely a harrowing scene and it's definitely a horrible scene, and Katniss finds out and she runs and she gets whipped in the face, and then Haymitch comes over and he's like, you're about to get fucked up because she is currently the people's princess. Like, she is the capital's princess. She's about to get married. She has a black eye. And so much of that scene, I think, says so much, especially about Peter, because he very much comes forward and is like, one, she's my fiance, do not do that to her. Secondly, that is her cousin. So he's like also defending Gale, which we haven't really seen before. There's definitely a sense of tension between those three, obviously, because it's quite an awkward situation, because Gale is clearly very much into Katniss. Katniss is very clearly a little bit indifferent about both of them. Peter definitely makes her feel a different way to Gale, but she loves them both for so many different reasons. So that is just the first time that we see them kind of work together for one of their sake. And that is where I'm currently up to. I'm very scared, however, because I feel like we're literally about to get to that scene where they find out what is happening for the quarter quell, and that breaks my heart when Haymitch finds out that he has potential to go back into the games. Definitely want to read a lot more of this tonight. It is such a quick read, like, it's so easy to fly through, and actually one of my best friends has just started it for the first time. She's never read The Hunger Games. And we were talking about, despite it being published in 2008 and despite it being a YA, it really holds up so well. And even reading it as an adult, it's so not enjoyable, because obviously the series isn't enjoyable, but it is still so captivating and so compelling, and the storytelling, and even to do with character analysis, like, it doesn't read too young YA, and I just think it holds up so brilliantly, and I'm loving seeing that from like an adult perspective. Like I said, I'm planning on reading a lot more of this today. I don't know how much, but I will give you an update once I have an update. I know what's about to happen and I'm not looking forward to it. I'm now on part 2 of Catching Fire. I'm on chapter 10, and there was just a scene. I really forgot how much happens at the start of Catching Fire in the book in comparison to the start of Catching Fire in the movie. They cut out so much. Hannah just ran into 2 people while she was out, and she asked them where they're from, because they're literally holding a loaf of bread with the mockingjay like embedded into it, and they say, "My name's Twill," says the woman. She's older, maybe 35 or so, and this is Bonnie. We've run away from District 8. Obviously Katniss is like, "Where the hell are you going?" And they're saying, "We're running away to District 13. They're talking about how District 13, all of the people and all of the districts have only seen District 13 in like clips that are completely like just full of rubble, like it's completely deserted. There is no life, or the propaganda of they're meant to believe there is completely nothing there, and there is no life there. However, they're going off of the fact that they just saw a bird in one of the clips." Katniss obviously can't even fathom this, but then they talk about, "I think the people moved underground when everything on the surface was destroyed. We think they've managed to survive, and we think the capital leaves them alone because before the dark days, District 13's principal industry was nuclear development." Katniss completely argues against it, and she just questions, like, if they do exist, why aren't they helping us? So she goes home and she tries to find a news reporting of somebody in District 13, and she mentions how she sees the exact same flash of a Mockingjay's wing, and she says the reporter has simply been incorporated into the old footage. She's not in District 13 at all, which begs the question, what is? Obviously, when you know the entire build-up of the end of the series and just where like Mockingjay the book and the film go, the foreshadowing and the way that everything is already speculated, and is also, we're kind of told the truth instantly. I just love that so much. I think it just is such incredible storytelling. I am now going to read a little bit more. Like I said in one of the last clips, I'm scared because I know what we're getting up to. We're getting up to the quarter quell scenes where they're about to find out what the quarter quell holds for them, and it tears my heart out every single time I read it and or watch it. Let's read that. Let's hope that I don't cry or I don't want to throw my book at the wall. Cinna, I love him so much. Initially, Cinna designed 24 wedding gowns. So he's literally obsessed with Katniss, and I love it so much. I love their friendship. Oh my god, oh my god. Okay, I think it's happening. That's right, this year will be the 75th anniversary of the Hunger Games, and that means it's time for our 3rd quarter quell. On the 50th anniversary, the president continues. As a reminder that 2 rebels died for each capital citizen, every district was required to send twice as many tributes. Imagine facing a field of 47 instead of 23. Worse odds, less hope, and ultimately more dead kids. That was the year Haymitch won. I'm not ready to read Sunrise on the Reaping. Oh, Katniss's mum says, "I had a friend who went that year, Maisie Donna. Her parents own the sweet shop." I'm gonna note that for later. On the 75th anniversary, as a reminder to the rebels that even the strongest among them cannot overcome the power of the capital, the male and female tributes will be reaped from their existing pool of victors. Why are my eyes actually watering? Oh my god. What it means, at least for me, District 12 only has 3 existing victors to choose from. 2 male, 1 female. I'm going back into the arena. Cultural reset. I admit it was easier for the boy. He was here before I could snap the seal on a bottle, begging me for another chance to go in, but what can you say? Take his place, Hamish, because all things being equal, I'd rather Peter had a crack at the rest of his life than you. I'm afraid that's what I do want, for Peter to live, even if it means Hamish's death. No, I don't. He's dreadful, of course, but Hamish is my family now. I actually can't with this. You could live 100 lifetimes and not deserve him, you know. Now on page 284 of Catching Fire. I am quite a bit of the way through now, and I feel like this point in Catching Fire is so pivotal, both in all of my memories and my nostalgia for it, but simultaneously just in terms of the plot. I can't remember exactly what my last update was, however, I know I mentioned Hamish because, babe, let's be real, all I'm talking about is really Hamish in this video. There was a scene where Katniss and Peter were both watching Hamish's games, and I kind of completely glossed over that. Obviously, they don't talk about it in the movie, so I kind of forgot the details of his games from the book. Now knowing that Sunrise on the Reaping exists, I can't even really say there's spoilers, but you do literally find out how Hamish wins the games and like the last two people who were alive before him. It's very interesting now that I've obviously read that in here and I have that reminder, because now I'm gonna go into Sunrise on the Reaping aware of how he wins the games, and I find that so intriguing. I wonder if Suzanne Collins actually knew she was gonna write a Hamish novel this entire time and she just dropped that in as a little Easter egg. I don't know, but I just found that really interesting, especially when it comes to Hamish's games and the specific moment of it that they talk about. They really focus on force field, which obviously, again, if you know the story of Catching Fire, what kind of happens at the end with Katniss and the arrow, but simultaneously later on when all of the tributes go into their training on their own to kind of impress the game makers, all of a sudden, I can't remember her name, but the woman that is with Beatty, she recognizes that there is a force field because of a glimmer, and obviously that is one because of Katniss aiming the arrow at the pig the games previous, but it definitely foreshadows the force field that Katniss uses at the end, and I just thought that was so brilliant. I love a foreshadowing moment, I'm not gonna lie. It was such a prime example of how Hamish also defied the Capitol without ever meaning to, and the comparisons between him and Katniss just literally floor me. We also found out when Katniss was having dinner with everybody that Darius, who was the District 12 peacekeeper, he has been the District 12 peacekeeper since literally Katniss was a child. Everyone for the most part in District 12 got along with him. He was quite a nice peacekeeper. And when earlier on in the book there was that scene where Gale was being whipped for being caught with the turkey above his shoulder from a different new peacekeeper, Darius very much stepped in and tried to stop it. Later on, Katniss sees that he is an Avox, so very clearly he got his tongue cut off because he stepped in for Gale. And Snow, I actually fucking hate him so much. He very evidently made Darius Katniss's Avox just so she can see like the consequences of these sort of actions. I hate that man so much, and it is such a heartbreaking scene. But the scene that I'm currently on, which is why I wanted to come on and give an update, because this scene, again, another cultural reset. We've had the scene with all of the tributes training and just the comparisons to the first book. Like all of these tributes, obviously a lot of them know each other. They are all essentially friends and they are all kind of working together. But I just got to the scene where they're having their interviews with Caesar and Katniss is wearing her wedding dress because of Snow, of course. Joanna says make him pay for it. Obviously Snow, again, forcing Katniss to wear the wedding dress, but I know the line that is about to drop if it wasn't for the baby. I'm so excited to read it. And obviously there is also the scene where Katniss's wedding dress turns into a mockingjay and then Cinna. I can't think about Cinna. I'm not doing it yet. This point of the book is one of my favorites, and obviously we also have the scene after, which again I haven't even read yet, where all of the tributes hold hands after the interviews, and it's so moving and I just love this book so much. So I'm literally gonna sit here and read as much of it as I can. This is very much the moment before all of the heartbreak. And oh my god, I didn't even say that obviously Finnick has been introduced. Don't worry, I always channel my emotions into my work. That way I don't hurt anyone but myself. I love Cinna so much. He is undoubtedly one of the best characters in this franchise. Surely even a brief time is better than no time. Maybe I'd think that too, Caesar, says Peter bitterly. If it weren't for the baby? Suzanne Collins knew the what she was doing. It's so clever, but it's also so insane how the people of the Capitol in the crowd obviously lose their heads when they find out that Katniss is pregnant, yet they really don't mind sending off 14-year-old children to be slaughtered. Like, it's so crazy, but obviously the whole Capitol was crazy anyway. Like, who understands any of them? Because I don't. And then it happens. Up and down the row, the victors begin to hold hands. By the time the anthem plays its final strains, all 24 of us stand in one unbroken line in what must be the first public show of unity among the districts since the dark days. I love that scene so much. Oh my god, don't. There's a massive mob as they're all obviously trying to leave the interview because there's just utter chaos, and they said, then we'll never see Effie again. You'll give her our thanks. Katniss says, more than that, really make it special. It's Effie after all. Tell her how appreciative we are and how she was the best escort ever, and tell her we send our love. Oh, I can't with the Haymitch goodbyes. I can't. You take care, Haymitch. Katniss, when you're in the arena, he begins, then he pauses. He's scowling in a way that makes me sure I've already disappointed him. What? I ask defensively. You just remember who the enemy is, Haymitch tells me. That's all. Now go on, get out of here. Oh no. Oh no, I think it's the scene with Cinna. Remember Girl on Fire? I'm still betting on— no, I can't actually fucking read it because I'm gonna cry. That's so fun. The Peacekeepers ignore me completely as they drag Cinna's limp body from the room. All that's left are the smears of blood on the floor. We're in the arena. I say how much I love this book. It actually, words, it emotionally destroys me on a whole other level. I'm not looking forward to reading the rest of it, I'm not gonna lie. Good morning, guys. Yesterday you saw me in a cafe. I was finishing Catching Fire, and oh my god, what a whirlwind of a book to experience anyway, especially on a reread. I knew going into this book specifically that I would absolutely love it because it is my favourite in the entire franchise, and still 100% I honestly don't think Mockingjay is going to top it. I adore this book for so many reasons. I think in this book specifically we spent a lot more time seeing the capital, seeing just the inner workings of the capital, and especially Snow's mind. We see the start of the uprisings and the revolution starting. There is so much foreshadowing, and I think it is just so brilliantly done and so brilliantly written. Obviously a lot happened between when I last updated you and me finishing the book. We were obviously in the games, and one thing that I find so particularly interesting about the game in Catching Fire is the layout and like what the arena actually is. Obviously if you're watching this far, I'm assuming that you've either read the book or you've watched the movie, but obviously the arena is a clock, which we find out later on. However, the clock is water. Obviously there is land surrounding the water, but when you start on the podium you are literally you need to swim to get to the cornucopia and then obviously to get to the land, which is such an interesting choice from the game makers and such a crude and really violent choice because most of the tributes don't know how to swim. Unless you're a career or you're from District 4, you are not going to know how to swim. Katniss does know how to swim solely because she used to go to the lake with her dad, but obviously the game makers and Snow wouldn't know that. It's also really interesting because when I say the game makers, it's so clear. Is it Plutarch? Is that his name? At the end of this book, we obviously find out that everyone's sole intention in this arena was to save Katniss and also Peter, but especially Katniss because she is the face of the revolution. Plutarch, the head game maker for the 75th Hunger Games in this one, was in on it. So he was very aware, but he wouldn't have known she could swim. And I'm like, a bit of a bold choice. There are also so many gorgeous scenes in this. I just love in this book specifically how close all of the victors are together and how they really do kind of refuse to kill each other at times, and they use it as a force of the revolution. I just thought it was so genius, and this book is actually like the best book ever written, actually, genuinely. Honestly, tried to convince me otherwise. I adore this book so much. I did on a reread also rate it how I did the first time, 5 stars. Without a doubt, this is a 5-star read for me. It makes me so happy that it absolutely still lives up to my obsession and my love for this series, and especially this book. It's the best feeling in the world when you reread a childhood favourite and it's still so great as an adult. Obviously this book ends where Katniss is taken in a hovercraft. She finds Finnick in the hovercraft, Haymitch is there, Plutarch is there. Initially she's obviously very confused. She quickly realises and she quickly finds out that they were all sort of scheming to save her in this game, and this was the plan sort of all along. And they are on their way to District 13. So now they know that District 13 is a real place. Gale is also there, and Katniss is obviously confused. She's asking about her mum and about Prim, and Gale swiftly tells her that District 12 just doesn't exist anymore. After everything that happened in this game, and Katniss aimed her bow and arrow at the force field, which obviously caused it all to just kind of fall down and completely deteriorate. Capital and Snow specifically ordered for bombs to be dropped, we suppose on all of the districts, but especially on District 12, and just District 12 does not exist anymore. Now obviously I am on to Mockingjay. I did briefly listen to or start the audiobook this morning. I'm actually off to go get my nails done, so I'm hoping to read the majority, hopefully, of this today. Really intrigued about this one specifically because I can't quite remember why they decided to split Mockingjay into 2 parts for the movies. I think it works brilliantly. However, I'm really intrigued to see what the pacing is going to be like in just obviously the one book, but I'm really excited to get into this. I cannot believe that I'm already onto the last book. I feel like I'm going to be so sad. Obviously I have Sunrise on the Reaping, but I feel like I'm going to be so sad once I've finished this franchise again. But yeah, I'm now onto Mockingjay. I'm going to go to my nail appointment and let's see how much I can read. Hi guys, as you would have seen, I am now onto Mockingjay. We are onto the final book for this video and the final book in the Hunger Games series. I'm currently on page 61, so I'm really not that far through it, and already I kind of forgot how much happens at the beginning of this book. I think I mentioned it in my previous clip how I'm so fascinated and so intrigued to see the pacing of this book, because obviously this book is split into 2 films. I can't quite remember the pacing of the book and how everything starts playing out, so I'm really intrigued to see how all of that goes. Right at the beginning of the book, obviously we are introduced to District 13 and to Coin, who is the president of District 13. There is so much foreshadowing, even in the first 50 pages of this book, specifically about Coin and about District 13 and the similarities to like Coin and Snow. It is so interesting, and I kind of overlooked that, I feel, when I was younger. One of the most pivotal scenes that I've read so far in this book is of course Peter and a few of the other tributes from the game in Catching Fire were taken hostage by the Capitol, and there was this scene where Peter was basically doing an interview with Caesar Flickerman and it was being broadcasted in District 13 and Katniss was watching it. It was her first confirmation that Peter is still alive. However, it was a very interesting interview because Peter by the end of it is essentially pleading for a ceasefire, which is so obviously out of character for him because he hates the Capitol, he hates what they've done to him and to everybody else. Throughout the entire interview, Peter is talking about how he and Katniss had no idea of the plans that the tributes and the game maker had in Catching Fire. Of course, the entire plan was to save both Katniss and Peter, but especially Katniss because she is the Mockingjay, she is the face of the revolution. Peter in this interview is constantly reiterating how he and Katniss had absolutely no idea, and you know, it's not her fault and don't blame her, but in the same breath pleading for a ceasefire, and obviously they don't like that in District 13 because why would he be pleading for a ceasefire? Following on from that, we then get the scene where Katniss finally agrees to become the Mockingjay. Obviously she was kind of inevitably the Mockingjay anyway, but she herself finally decides to become the Mockingjay, and there's this gorgeous scene where Cinna essentially made this outfit for her once she finally decided to become the Mockingjay, and Katniss receives it being told that he didn't want her to have it until she made the decision herself, and she sees this little note that essentially just says, "I'm still rooting for you." Cinna breaks my heart. In order for her to become the Mockingjay too, she definitely had things that she wanted to be fulfilled. One definitely being Peter and all of the other tributes to be pardoned. Coin, obviously the bitch that she is, isn't happy about that because Peter has just called for a ceasefire, so she's like, oh my god, he's with the Capitol now, babe. He's being tortured. Another one was for Katniss and Gale to be able to go out hunting in District 13, which obviously they've started doing, and then for Prim, her sister, to keep her cat. So now Katniss is the Mockingjay. That is kind of the main thing that is currently happening where I am. I'm so intrigued to, again, just to carry on reading it and to see how the pacing is going to be. There are definitely pivotal points in this book that I really like and some that I don't like so much. This is definitely my least favourite in the series, but I'm intrigued to see how I feel about it as an adult. I feel like this one is the one that is the most political and has the most social commentary in it, and I think that it's just astounding. So I'm really intrigued to reread it again, as I said, as an adult. Actually, I just remembered I've been listening to a little bit more of the audiobook, so I am slightly past the 60-page mark, and we've just got to the scene where Katniss gets to the hospital of refugees, and obviously if you've watched the movie, it's a devastating scene, and I'm really scared to see how that unravels in the book. I'm also intrigued to see how many differences there are in this one. I feel like there could be quite some big differences that I didn't realise the first time round, but as much as it's so nice to reread it for nostalgia purposes, I think just currently in our societal and political climate, it's such an imperative read. So enjoyment absolutely is not the right word, but it is so phenomenal, and yeah, I'm just really terrified for a lot that's going to happen in this book. I'm going to read a little bit more. I think I might actually do a little bit of colouring this evening whilst listening to the audiobook, and I will update you again once I have some more thoughts. I am now on page 199, so I thought that I was due an update because I honestly think that this last chunk I'm just going to binge read, I'm going to binge listen to the audiobook, and then I'll likely come and tell you my final thoughts, which is crazy. I feel like I've been filming this video forever. So much has happened since I last updated you. Obviously I mentioned at the very end of where I was last time, it was the scene where they were all at the hospital and obviously the Capitol were about to bomb it. It is such a prevalent scene in the movie. It was one of the scenes that shook me the most as a teenager, but simultaneously reading it in the book, it is so moving and it is so raw and it's so real, and I think it's a real reflection on the whole point of this novel and this whole series. That scene is so prevalent in Katniss's character arc. I think for her, obviously she's already instilled into her brain that things do need to change and she wants to help incite change. However, obviously she walks into this hospital with all of these injured women, men and children, and they are like greeting her and they're so excited to see her. And not even an hour later she is there and she sees this place be bombed and there are no survivors. And obviously I think there are so many points throughout the entire franchise really where Katniss definitely obviously recognises the fact that change needs to happen, but in Mockingjay specifically, this one feels like one of the most prevalent. Off of the back end of that scene too, there is probably one of the most infamous quotes in the entire franchise where she's looking, or she's being filmed right in front of the hospital that's burning, and she obviously turns around and she says, "Directed to Snow, you see that fire is catching, and if we burn, you burn with us." Somehow, even though I've probably read that line a minimum of 5 times and I've watched the movies an ungodly amount of times, it still had the same effect, I feel like, than the first time I ever read it. It is such a moving and heartbreaking scene, and I feel like it perfectly executes the entire tone for the rest of the franchise and the rest of the book. Another scene in this that really moves me to my core is when a few of them go back to District 12, which is obviously entirely rubble for the most part. They are there to film Katniss and Gale walking through District 12, talking about their memories, and they end up at the lake and Katniss just starts singing The Hanging Tree. She speaks about how her mum used to forbid her from singing it because obviously the message surrounding the song, and then she sings it and the mockingjays sing it back, and it is such a beautiful song. Again, such an important moment, but this song especially on its own even is so prevalent, and I just remember again, especially watching the movie, I think actually hearing Jennifer Lawrence sing it was so moving and it is so beautiful and it is so heartbreaking. And that scene, I read it and I just love that scene so much. I think it's so important and it's so beautiful, and honestly I feel like that with so many scenes in this book, which I kind of had forgotten about. But then after that, a lot more heartbreak happens. Where I'm currently at, Katniss and District 13 and everybody there are currently focusing on filming clips to kind of send out to all of the districts so that they can see that District 13 is alive and well, and you know, they are on the right side of history. There's this moment where they walk out and there is an abundance of roses clearly sent from Snow, I hate him, towards Katniss, obviously as a threat. And I think as well, now that I'm rereading this for the first time since reading Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, Snow and roses are explored so much in there, and it's so clear that that is such a massive part to his character and his demise, but simultaneously the way that he finds himself, or rather presents himself, as threatening to other people. And that's what he did to Katniss. He has all of these roses right in front of her and she's trying to talk about Peter and she's trying to talk about her experiences, but she can't because she's so transfixed on the smell of these roses. So instead Finnick steps in and he starts discussing about his experience in the capital and how Snow used to sell him. It is obviously so heartbreaking to read about and so heartbreaking to hear, and he's talking about how Snow used to sell him, and in exchange he would ask for people's secrets of the capital. Due to that, Finnick knows a lot about all of the people in the capital, but especially Snow, and he kind of just drops that essentially Snow used to poison all of the people who were threats to him, even his allies. And Katniss just says poison is the perfect weapon for a snake, and like the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, it is so genius. And I think the way that Suzanne Collins has just set up this world and has set up this franchise, it's just so genius, and due to that it just makes so much sense that so many people adore this series still to this day. It is so well crafted and obviously still holds so much substance and so much relatability to our real world now, and unfortunately we can relate a lot to it. I just think the way that she's interweaved so many of these different character arcs and plot lines and storylines across a multitude of books now is genius. Now where I am at though, however, I literally stopped on chapter 13 because I just got to the point where Peter and the other tributes from the Catching Fire games were saved and rescued from the capital. Finnick is now reunited with Annie. Obviously Katniss is so full of joy and so full of happiness that Peter is not only alive but he's now with them in District 13. Little does she know what is about to happen. That chapter literally ends with his features register disbelief and something more intense that I can't quite place. Desire, desperation, surely both, for he sweeps the doctors aside, leaps to his feet and moves towards me. I run to meet him, my arms extended to embrace him. His hands are reaching for me too, to caress my face, I think. My lips are just forming his name when his fingers lock around my throat. Obviously I know for the most part that this scene, or probably like the next chapter, is where Mockingjay Part 1 the movie ends, but I was really intrigued to see how that would play out in the book. That scene shocked me to my core as a child. I remember so vividly watching Mockingjay Part 1 in the cinema and watching that last scene where obviously Peter is in like the bed and he's restrained. It actually made me question everything, and I remember so vividly being so thankful that I had already read Mockingjay the book, because I then knew what was going to happen and I knew what was going to play out. But I was gagged like Anyway, I'm gonna carry on reading. I would say I'm currently about just under halfway left, and I don't want it to end. Like, it's been such an experience rereading this for the first time in a decade. But in the same breath, I'm so excited for you guys to see this video because I've been filming it for so long. But yeah, we're now gonna probably binge read, or at least I will try and update you maybe once more. But I'm gonna try and read as much of Mockingjay as I can now. This book, I can't. I am now on page 356 of Mockingjay. Guys, look at how close I am to the end now. So much has happened. We had Finnick's wedding, which is such a beautiful scene because obviously it's one of the first scenes that we've seen in so long where they're actually joyful and dancing and having a good time together, and it's beautiful. Katniss and Finnick too have been training because they're going to go on a mission to kind of go into the capital and kind of take Snow, or slash in Katniss's brain she wants to kill him, obviously. So they have been training for that. Also guys, my throat is so sore, so please ignore it. They have been training for the mission, and I will say that these scenes were slightly repetitive the way that in the first game all of the scenes with Katniss and Peter in the cave were. I'm aware that they're obviously so prevalent to the entire climax of this franchise, but also this book in general. And as much as obviously Katniss and Finnick need to train for this mission, it's also slightly ironic, and Katniss does mention that those two being the ones to be trained, they were the ones that survived the games to begin with. It's kind of like, babe, we know how to live, we know how to survive, we know how to fight. One of my absolute favourite side characters too, which I kind of forgot about, is Boggs. I love him so much. I don't know exactly how I would describe what he does. I'm sure there's a proper name for it, but he lives in District 13, of course, and he's very much like a cameraman. He's very much behind the scenes of all of the filming and the protecting. He's a really good fighter too, so he also came on the mission, and I just kind of recently read the scene where he died. Peter instantly blames himself for the fact that Boggs is dying solely because he kind of pushed him back onto this like detonator, which was a bomb, and then he died. And there is this moment right before he dies. His final words are, "Don't trust them, don't go back, kill Peter, do what you came to do." And obviously he is directing this to Katniss, and ever since his death she's been very much questioning, who shouldn't I trust? Why do I have to kill Peter? It's obviously, as the reader, it's so evident that she shouldn't trust Coin. Boggs, about 2 scenes prior to his death, said to Katniss about how Coin doesn't like her, and initially she wanted Peter to be the one saved from the games and catching fire. Obviously that isn't what ended up happening. Haymitch would never have allowed that to happen, but it just kind of cements that Coin is fucking evil, and we know that. She's just like Snow, and I think Katniss like is starting to turn in her brain. One of my favourite scenes in this entire book too, which actually happened prior to all of this, so I probably should have mentioned it first, is obviously as Peter comes out of his hijacked mind, he can't really distinguish what was real and what wasn't real, and still what is happening and whether to trust Katniss or not. So there is this gorgeous scene where everyone is underground trying to get rest, and Katniss and Peter start up this conversation where Peter just essentially is asking what is real and what wasn't real, and how he cannot trust his own mind, which is heartbreaking. And the reason it is one of my favourite scenes in the entire series probably is I think it just perfectly cements Peter and Katniss's relationship, and I think it really also highlights Katniss really remembering Peter and really worshipping him in a sense, and remembering every single minute detail even though he cannot remember himself anymore. So it says, "At a few minutes before 4, Peter turns to me again. 'Your favourite colour? It's green.' That's right. Then I think of something to add, and yours is orange." Orange? He seemed unconvinced. "Not bright orange, but soft, like the sunset, I say. At least that's what you told me once," which obviously was when they were on the train in the first book. "Oh," he closes his eyes briefly, maybe trying to conjure up that sunset, then nods his head. "Thank you." But more words tumble out. "You're a painter, you're a baker, you like to sleep with the windows open, you never take sugar in your tea, and you always double knot your shoelaces." I love them so much. And kind of unsurprisingly, again, I feel like that was the last happy scene because babe, Finnick has just died. Finnick has just died. Now, having reread that scene, I actually feel like somehow, maybe because it's, when you see it visually, it's so different in a movie. I think in the movie it was sadder. Like, they made it more sad somehow. Through the mission, as they are literally about to enter the capital, they walk through this building and through this living room specifically, and there's a TV that randomly turns on with this emergency broadcast. The emergency broadcast is essentially just showing that all of them, that entire group, including Katniss, Finnick and Peter and Boggs and everybody else, were killed by one of the bombs. Now, everyone is obviously under the impression that they have all died. Even the people in District 13, like Katniss's mum and Prim, they all think that she is dead and that Gale and Peter and Finnick and everyone else are dead. However, they they are not, and it's Snow on the broadcast making a speech, and then Coin from District 13 does a eulogy for Katniss. So they're all under the impression that they are dead. It does obviously somewhat work into their favour, but then they go into the underground system and like the sewers, and it's just not very nice, and these mutts start chasing them. From the first book and the first game, we obviously see the mutts right at the end, which were the tributes, essentially, like just mutated, I suppose. These mutts are different. They're kind of described as like lizard-like and kind of alien-like, and they are just chasing them with the sole intention to kill Katniss, and it is such a horrible scene because Finnick, I actually can't. I was listening to the audiobook this morning and that scene was happening whilst I was making my morning cup of tea, and I was just like, this is not how I intended to start my day. I felt actually quite sick. The scene where he dies reads, "No, Katniss, they are not coming," says Gale, "only the mutts are." Unable to accept it, I shine the light from Cressida's gun down the shaft. Far below, I can just make out Finnick, struggling to hang on as 3 mutts tear at him. As one yanks back his head to take the death bite, something bizarre happens. It's as if I'm Finnick, watching images of my life flash by. The mast of a boat, a silver parachute, Mags laughing, a pink sky, BT's trident, Annie in her wedding dress, waves breaking over rocks, and then it's over. Are you joking? I actually can't. Like, that death kills me. Like, it... Anyway, I think somehow they did make it sadder in the film, maybe because of the actor, I don't know. Now though, I'm literally at the scene where they are about to enter the capital, and I'm really intrigued because I feel like Tigress is about to be introduced. Tigress is obviously Snow's cousin, and I'm so fascinated to see how her character reads from this book and as an adult, especially now that I've read and watched Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, because obviously she is such a prevalent character in that and she's a lot younger in that. I'm just so intrigued, and yeah, I feel like because I literally have less than 100 pages left, I'm probably just going to binge read the rest of this now, maybe listen to the audiobook, and then I'll come on with my final thoughts of this book. I cannot believe that this video is ending today. I've been filming it for so long. I'm so excited to get it up and for you guys to see it, and I'm also just so excited to round up my reread, even though it's going to be incredibly bittersweet. But yeah, I'm also kind of gagged because I know exactly what's about to come with the ending. I'm gonna finish it and then I'll give you my final thoughts. Good morning, guys. I just finished Mockingjay, and I don't know why I've got a smile on my face. Babe, I nearly cried. I was listening to the audiobook I was getting ready this morning. The last like chapter, I brought a tear to my eye, I'm not gonna lie. I feel like me reading this now, I've loved it the most than I ever have any other time I've ever read it or done a reread, and I don't know why that is. I think maybe because I'm a bit older, I can absolutely see all of the social commentary, especially in this book. This book is so political and it is so full of those really incredible discussions that Suzanne Collins is so great at, especially to do with injustice and discrimination and war and everything like that. I just think this book is the most prevalent book in the entire franchise in that sense, and I just loved it even more than I ever have done before. I am going to still rate it a 4-star. There were so many moments that I absolutely adored in this. There are so many heartbreaking moments in this. Obviously the ending is so impactful and so heartbreaking and so hard to read. I think especially the scene where all of the families and children are looking for safeguarding and protection in Snow's facility, and obviously they all start, and there's a mass crowd, they all start heading towards there, and instead of getting a safe haven, the rebels bomb them. And there is this scene specifically where they're talking about how the children are so used to equating these silver parachutes that were coming down by the masses as food or like medicine, so they were all reaching up for it, but they were bombs. Obviously hundreds and thousands of families and children die, and also Prim dies, which is again such a prevalent part of the entire story. I also feel like Prim dying is almost like an exact commentary on just all the whole representation of all of these children that have died. Obviously Katniss's whole journey going into the Hunger Games and being a tribute began because Prim was picked, so the fact that Prim died at the end kind of symbolizes the end of her journey for that. I think having that plot decision as a metaphor like that is really genius, but simultaneously, my god, did it rip my heart out when I read it for the first time as a teenager. It broke me because it was so unpredicted, and I did absolutely not see that coming, and I think that Suzanne Collins did that purposefully, and yeah, that is a really, really heartbreaking scene. After that, Snow gets sentenced to be executed, and Katniss says that she will be the one to like do the final blow. However, obviously she doesn't do that, and instead she kills Coin, and Snow dies anyway. Like it was kind of speculated whether he kind of died by his own hand or he was like completely crushed by the crowd, but he did end up dead regardless. Coin also ending up dead. Obviously as a reader, when we're first reading this book, we think, oh my god, she's going to be the savior of District 13 and she's going to save everyone and like she's going to be so much better than Snow. We very quickly realise, or at least the foreshadowing in this book definitely highlights instantly, that Coin is just as bad as Snow in many different ways, and I think for Katniss that is absolutely solidified by the fact that right at the end of the book they talk about holding one final Hunger Games including all of the capital's children as a way of ending it all totally, and Katniss initially officially agrees to this, but Katniss agrees to it solely so she can kill Coin, or that is my reading of it anyway. This entire rebellion and this whole thing of trying to overthrow Snow and build a better society, and Coin just wants to throw one more Hunger Games. Like, it's absolutely batshit insane. And some of the tributes, like Peter, are instantly like, absolutely not. Annie's also like, absolutely not, saying that Finnick would also wildly disagree. Haymitch says yes with Katniss. He says, I agree with the Mockingjay. However, I don't think that he necessarily wanted another Hunger Games. I think that everything that he stands for, he finds them so abhorrent. And again with them two, I think that that is such a good representation of how similar they are in their thinking and their scheming. And yeah, just the ending of this book, so much happens. It is so moving. Obviously the final end, we see Peter and Katniss having children and falling back in love with each other again and getting to live that happily ever after. The closure at the end is so satisfying and so rewarding and so fulfilling, and I love this series so much. I am so happy that I decided to do a reread before The Sunrise on the Reaping came out. Obviously The Sunrise on the Reaping has been out for quite a while at the time that I'm finishing this, and you're also going to see it. I am reading it this month. I will be reading it in a vlog. I don't quite know if I'm going to include spoilers just yet. If you would like to see spoilers in it, obviously if I do it at the end of the vlog, I'll clarify that there's spoilers for anyone who hasn't read it yet. But I am so excited to read it, and I'm so glad that I have that book to go on to right after finishing these. It doesn't feel like the chapter is entirely closed for me yet. And as for the question as to whether this series is worth reading 10 years on, absolutely. I think if you've read it before, do a reread. If you haven't read it before, please pick it up. I absolutely wholeheartedly believe that this is a series that is undoubtedly gonna stand the test of time and is deserving of the title of it being a modern classic. I love it for that. I love this entire franchise so much. I think it represents and stands for such imperative discussions, especially currently. I think it's crazy how realistic as to our societal and sort of political climate. I think it speaks volumes, and yeah, I just love this series so much. Like I said, I'm so happy that I did the reread. And with that, I cannot believe that this video is over. If you have watched until the very end, oh my god, thank you. I can imagine that this video is quite long. Please let me know, out of every single book in this entire franchise, but especially the core three, which book is your favorite? Have you ever done a reread and has that sort of changed? Do you have a favorite scene in these books, or even a favorite character? I would love to know. Or if you would like to show that you stayed until the very end of the video, because my god, it was a long one, please comment any arrow emoji or any bird emoji or any fire emoji, any Hunger Games sort of coded emoji. As always too, if you did enjoy this video and you are not yet subscribed, it would mean the world to have you here. I plan on doing so many more vlogs dedicated, spoiler filled and non-spoiler, dedicated to one entire series. So if you do have a book series, no matter what it is or no matter what the genre is, that you would love to see me read for one vlog where I read this series in its entirety, please also comment that down below, because I do have some series in mind that I definitely want to get to and do that for this year too. The Poppy War and the Mortal Instruments, those are my sort of priorities, but if there are any more, please let me know. And yeah guys, thank you so much for being here and for spending some time with me today. I really hope you enjoyed, and I will see you again very soon with another video.